Hey guys, welcome. This is Tom Grieve here at the USCCA headquarters in beautiful West Bend, Wisconsin. I'm here with Steve Fisher.
That's me.
Brick from the training team. And given the time of year, we thought it'd be a great idea to talk about something that maybe you're thinking about but haven't really talked about, which is it's going back to school time. So I think it's a great topic for us to have some of our top instructors here to go into and start to talk about and to field some of your questions live. So before we jump into that, Steve, what do we have coming up as far as oncoming training classes?
The training division just finished our busiest month ever, and we're going into the month of September. But before we get there, actually, I and a couple of our guys are leaving tomorrow morning for Portland, Maine, where we're going to be doing a Defensive Shooting Fundamentals Level 1 instructor certification. So we've got that going on this weekend. We've got about 24 people sign up for that class.
Wow.
We come back, we got a Labor Day in between there, and then we got another class that we're hosting here in West Bend, Wisconsin, and it's going to be a combination of Level 1, Level 2 Defensive Shooting Fundamentals. And I think we're right around 35 people in that class right now. We wind down at the end of September with a fun outing. It's a charitable donation that we do on a regular basis where we call it Suns Out, Guns Out. We get a lot of people from the local business community to come in and be introduced to the different firearms platforms, and it's usually a lot of fun in a safe way, but it's a lot of fun. And then we will finish up the month with a training counselor class for our concealed carry and home defense fundamentals curriculum. And then tag on to that Defensive Shooting Fundamentals Level 1 certification. So we're busy.
That sounds busy.
The demand is there, and that's the reason why.
And I think we're out of time.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. But yeah, no, so like we mentioned before, we're me talking about, obviously from our different perspectives, we've got two top trainers here. Myself as a former state prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, we're going to be weighing in and trying to give you some useful things to think about when we're talking about kids going back to school, which is obviously an extraordinarily difficult topic to talk about, one that's not getting easier, particularly as we keep watching headlines and headlines and headlines roll past. So we appreciate everybody joining in. We've got, let's see here, and I'm going to be looking at an off-screen TV over here to see, we've got Drayton, we've got Brian, we've got Robert Ulmer. Guys, thanks for tuning in. On YouTube, we've got David Harrington, Whirlwind, we've got Jeffrey Clarkson, Bob Sylvia, David Santiago, Luis, Leonel. Guys, thank you for everybody. We've got Orlando, Florida, New Jersey, Las Vegas, Arizona, Kansas City, all over. Welcome to Wisconsin, guys, all right? That's all I can say. And it's actually a good day to be here because it's actually pretty beautiful outside right now.
Yeah.
So back to school. Steve, what do folks need to know? What do folks need to be thinking about when we're talking about back to school safety?
Well, in today's environment, you know, we've had a number of tragic incidents that have happened at schools, and because schools have rules and laws to back up those rules, which are primarily no firearms on the premises, we need to help our children to understand how to safe themselves. You know, they have teachers as their guides, but you know they have little brains, well, very powerful brains as a matter of fact, and we can help them understand what to do in situations where something bad might be happening. And I was watching a lot of videos in the last few weeks on the recent events, and I was seeing a lot of people responding to gunfire by stopping and turning around and actually orienting themselves to that gunfire, even taking steps closer to it to see what was going on. So I think that it would be kind of a very smart idea to help your children to recognize what gunfire sounds like and then teach them how important it is to react by getting away from it, moving away from it. You know, we all know that when we hear gunfire, we know which way it's coming from, right? Go the opposite way. And don't hesitate, because there might be a herd of people that are running down that hallway. If you have a third grader and the 8th graders were closer to what was happening and they're running down that hallway, that third grader stops and gets trampled, you know?
That's a stampede.
Yeah. We need to help them understand how to get away from that stuff, and it starts with what they've heard and what to do when they hear that.
And Steve, I know that your kids are all out of school age right now. Brick, coming over to you,
Yeah,
you're kind of at the other end of that spectrum,
The reason
right?
I'm here, so I guess, so I think our team went out and said, okay, who has the most kids in the building? We're going to throw them on camera today. So yeah, I've got 6 kids, all in school ages from 14 down to 6. So the stuff Steve's talking about, just, I mean, as he's sitting there talking about it, it's like sending chills down my back, just thinking about, you know, my little 6-year-old in the middle of a school and something happening. And I think it is really important what you said, getting kids knowledgeable about that, hearing the guns, what that sounds like, and then what to do. I mean, for me, all of my kids have heard guns. They've been around guns for their entire lives. I mean, they're my kids, so
Yeah.
it's just kind of the way it is. So
Right.
I think to what you're saying, there's a lot of truth there. Because a lot of people just like, oh, hey, what was that? What's going on? And that cannot be the reaction.
And something so simple that we take for granted as a given, maybe if you as an adult, you're into firearms, you've grown up hunting, you're whatever, you may just kind of take that as a given of this is what gunfire sounds like. And, we shouldn't take that as a for granted, as a given when it comes to children.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
we need to teach them because they're teachable.
Right.
I mean, that's where they're at. They're in a school to learn, right? Well, we can teach them at home as well.
Right.
And we can teach them when we take them to the range.
Right.
We always talk about having hearing protection. They're not going to have hearing protection on in these situations. So they should hear what it's like. And this is I'm stepping out on a limb right now, but I don't want to damage children's ears. But you know what? If you're outside at a range, get some distance, because more than likely it's not going to happen right next to you, or hopefully it doesn't ever happen there, but you can still get that sound, sound effect, and get away from it so that the hearing damage from hearing a few rounds going down range doesn't damage the ears. Go into an indoor range, you're not going to go inside of the range.
don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that at home, all right?
But you can step outside of that, in the retail area and look into the windows and hear what it sounds like when it's coming from a different room.
Right.
Even though that noise is dampened, you still hear what that sounds like. So
Right.
it gives them something inside of their heads to say, when they hear that noise, they know, that's bad news, I got to get out of here.
And it's not always what it sounds like in movies and cartoons and whatever else kids are watching these days. Just wanted to say hi to a few more people. We've got Tony Gillage. Apologize. Tom Rolfson, always great to have you back, Tom. We've got Thomas Evers, I apologize. Craig Webb, I'm going to bet from Texas. We got Brian Emerson again, Bruce Boyd. These are all folks on Facebook. We got Ron Glazer over on YouTube. We've got Nathan Coffey. We've got Brian Harris. We've got Bad Trevor R. Not sure if real name, probably not. Juan Hernandez from Chicago. Kevin Hayes from Edgewood, New Mexico. We've got Mr. Kroonrapat. We've got Mr. Jose Lopez, Jim Rose, Terrence Chandler. Guys, thank you everybody from California, Florida, all over the place. Welcome to Wisconsin. Thanks for tuning in. We're just starting off here. We just got going a couple minutes ago. I'm Tom Grief, former state prosecutor, criminal defense attorney. We're here with both Steve and Brick, two of the top trainers here at the USCCA, and the topic today is a hard one. We're talking about that back to school time and what do your kids need to know, what do you need to know, and we're taking your questions. So if you've got questions that you want us to answer, post them up. We've got member service people who are looking through all the chats and are feeding them to us. We've got a television just right off to my right that's going to be giving it to us. We're going to do our best to plow through as many of them as possible. So we look forward to them, guys. Max, should we take a question?
Yep.
All right. We got a question from Steve. And maybe for Steve, different Steve, is a 380 adequate for self-defense?
Yeah, well, there's always that great debate, is a 380 enough? Should it be a 9mm? Some of the guys that are my age and older, what do they love?
45.
They love that 45 ACP, right? Well, you know what? Here's what we teach everybody all the time. If you go and practice, if you train, if you get lessons taught to you by somebody that is a very highly experienced and credentialed firearms instructor, you'll learn how to be able to get rounds on target accurately. And we talk about defensive accurately, we're talking about the rounds on target that's going to stop the bad guy from coming at you. Will a 380 work? Well, of course it will. But now you have to factor in simple little things like, well, what time of the year is it? Because if they're wearing...
In Wisconsin.
right.
If
you're in Wisconsin and it's winter time and they're wearing thick down coats and stuff like that, that 380 might not be enough to do the job if you're going into the high center chest region.
Right.
And then we all know too that hitting up in the head area too, there's hard bone here.
Right.
I used to make a lot of money by letting people punch me in the head. That's a different video though.
They always put me next to him. All right? I don't know. All right? Someone leave some feedback about that, please. All right. But and to that point, as well as with caliber, we've got types of bullets. We've got ammunition. We have not only how powerful is it as a plus P, as a plus P plus, but also, of course, one of the things we're really spoiled about in today's day and age, Brick, is how just the breadth of the different types of ammunition, the controlled expansion, the deep penetration, and so forth. Do you think that really changes the game on the 380 than it did maybe 10 years ago?
I'd say that the technology and ammunition has changed so much. I think that the 380, for me, I would tell somebody that it would probably be okay to carry. I mean, with the technology of the ammo, I would see no reason not to. And I know a lot of times we're talking about like active shooter stuff. Once someone is met with resistance, they don't care what they're getting shot back at with. They're going to stop and they're going to turn, they're going to go away. They don't care if it's a 380, if it's a 9, if it's a 45. Once someone shows that resistance and starts shooting back at them, more times than not, they're going to check out and boogie.
Just that shock, just the psychological factor of, oh my God, someone's shooting at me, that in and of itself can be, not always of course, but can be its own defense, just right there. Yeah, so, and those are all obviously fantastic points, and ultimately, that firearm in the glove box carry probably isn't going to be too helpful for you. So for my own 2 cents, I mean, look, I'd rather have somebody carrying a 380 than nothing at all, quite frankly. So that's usually, from my state of mind and from the folks I talk to, are you actually going to carry it? That's the single biggest question, right? Because I can't tell you how many times at my end, yeah, I'm going to carry a Glock 22 or G17 or G19. It's like, all right, well, are you going to carry it? Because if you're not, then let's dial it down to something you'll actually carry. Maybe G43, G48 in Glock world, SIG 365, all fantastic choices.
In our classes, what are we seeing all the time?
9s pretty much.
9mm.
Pretty much always
handguns,
9s.
right?
Every once in a while, a 45.
Probably over 90% of it. And then you'll see a sprinkling of 40 cal and 45s. Sprinkling of them. We don't see a lot of people coming to the classes with the 380s. So that being said, it doesn't mean that the 380 doesn't work, but for some reason, the population of public that are using these firearms and going to training classes, they're using 9mm. And there's got to be a good reason for that, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that's kind of what law enforcement, everybody's kind of gone towards, after the 40 S&W kind of has not necessarily sunset, but it's definitely come down from a lot where it was maybe 20 years ago, where it just felt like everybody, 2/3 of law enforcement or something, I felt like was 40 S&W. All right, let's get into another one. We have Thomas. How much extra room do you need to properly fit armored plates in a backpack? Thinking of carry one. All right, and of course this could be for an adult, this could be for a child, this could be anything. And let's just start out by distinguishing the fact that there's different types of armor. So that specifically, the question had to do with plates, which has to me, it resonates with having some sort of rifle defense when we start talking about metal plates, ceramic plates, whatever it might be, as opposed to a level 1, level 2, level 3, some sort of soft Kevlar. Guys, what do you think about that? Do you get these kind of questions in classes? And if so, what do you tell people?
I've heard it brought up a few times. I personally have a plate in my backpack that I carry around every day. And as far as sizing goes, it fits right in the back of the backpack where like your water dispenser, whatever, like Camelback kind of thing would go in the back.
Is it metal or is it ceramic?
Ceramic.
Or what is it? Okay, so it's a lot lighter.
Yes.
What are the downsides, plus sides for somebody who's hearing about this and is interested about metal versus ceramic?
Well, definitely the weight issue, carrying around that steel plate is going to be a lot heavier. I know, Steve, you probably have even more experience with your military background with the different kinds of armor, but for me, it doesn't really seem like all that much. It's about the same weight as maybe a laptop that I throw in there, so it really doesn't, plus I carry guns and ammo and stuff in my backpack anyway.
The key words that you said was to you.
Right.
On our topic today, we're kind of talking about children.
Right.
I think that the whole idea of having some sort of plate inside of a child's backpack, that being better than nothing at all, it still is something that they're going to have to carry. So you got to look at the age of the children that are carrying the backpacks.
I wouldn't strap that on my 6-year-old. She'd like fall over.
The metal or the ceramic?
The metal one for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So and it takes up a little bit of room too.
Right.
I remember the day when they were complaining about all the books that the poor kids had to take home from school, that it was causing them back problems. The bottom line is that we're looking at ways to keep our kids alive in tragic situations, right? So, if you have access to and can afford to buy a backpack that has an armored plate in it, and your child can function with it, then it's better than having nothing.
Right, right. And it's obviously horrific that we have to talk about this, but it's equally as important that we talk about this as well, because frankly, there doesn't seem to be anyone else talking about these topics. And it's something that we try to do, is we try to bring you sometimes difficult conversations that need to happen, because odds are you've thought about it. So let's go there and let's talk about it in as respectful and as solemn as an approach possible, but also to a degree consumable. So, all right, next question from Tom R. I bet I know which Tom R. this is. What are extra considerations living right next to a school? Guys?
Well, what are the laws in your state that say what you can and can't do on school property, right? You have to follow those. So, I mean, the extra considerations would be that if you leave your premise with a firearm, don't go onto the school property.
Right.
You know, follow the rules of the law, you know, those types of things. And if you're looking at a situation where maybe somebody came into your home and you had to deal with them or dispatch them and they run onto school property, get on the phone and call the police. Don't go chasing them. You know,
Or
those
if you're
are-
shooting in your house towards a school potentially, also something else to consider.
Yeah.
If school's in your backyard and you have an intruder in it during the day,
Right.
and you're trying to, defend yourself, there may be kids on recess.
Right. Know your target and what is beyond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and to exactly what Steve was talking about there, you got to be careful about. Of course, you have the school, you've got the school facility, the buildings itself. You got the school grounds, which might be the extent of, and I'll use a legal term, the curtilage. Ooh, the curtilage. So
I don't even know what
Is this
that
like
is.
is that a dairy thing?
Is
or-
it something
It's a
with
fairy
milk?
tale, actually. But anyway, no, but it has to do with what's the property that extends and is part of the school. What's the school grounds, basically, is what we're talking about here. And then also keep in mind that some states and so forth, you're still dealing with the fact that maybe even 1,000 feet beyond school grounds is still going to be in play, at least on public property, hopefully not, probably not, on private property. Great time to kind of plug the USCCA website. For any of those of you who may not know, uscca.com/laws, LAWS, that S at the end is critical, I think, in order to get there, to check your local listings to see what the laws might be. It's super, super, super important. Anybody who's a repeat viewer knows that we are always talking about the fact that the laws matter just about as much as the facts, and sometimes maybe even more so. I hate to say it, unfortunately. So really educating yourself in the laws. Of course, education and training, that's why you're here, I assume. So it's super important to go hands-on with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the resources we provide are incredible. You know, as many of you have been with us for more than a few years, you've seen the evolution.
Right.
And we just keep on adding really smart people to the organization to help all of you
Hey,
partners.
thanks. That's like the nicest thing you've ever said about me, Steve.
Yeah, they're smart. I'm telling you right now, and hopefully the experiences that you've had and the education that you've had and that you share is welcomed and appreciated. But tune into these programs and get onto that website and look, read, learn. Not all day, every day, but at least for a few minutes every once in a
Right.
while, so you stay updated and current.
Yeah, a couple minutes now in a class or two while you're going along in it and keeping yourself educated and your skills sharp. Guys, this can literally make the difference in not only living or dying, God forbid, in the event of some sort of self-defense incident, but also spending the rest of that life. What is it going to look like in orange behind bars or with your family? So these are all incredibly important, and I know that you guys know that downlines because you're here. And that's proof enough that you're serious about it and you want to become the protector for your family. So
This is as much time as I want to spend with you, Tom, so just saying.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. At least not outside my office, right? So, all right. So let's say hi to a couple more people. We've got John Webb. We got Minnesota Cowboy Up from southeastern Minnesota. We've got Kevin Hayes. We got Terry Hammond, another Minnesota guy. We've got Nathan Coffey, just to name a few. We've got Zigo Farm. Jason Z from Michigan, it looks like. So that's fantastic. Great to see you guys here coming in on YouTube. We've got some more people over there on Facebook. We've got Katrina, we got Brian, we've got Ron Glazer again, we've got Heather, we've got Sonny Gonzalez, we've got all sorts of people in there. Great to see you guys. Let's take a couple more questions here. Max, what do we have next?
We got this one from Nathan about the training instructor courses on the East Coast.
Gotcha. So Nathan's question is, I saw that you will be offering an instructor course in Charlotte, North Carolina this fall. Will there be other future instructor courses on the East Coast?
I can answer that question very easily and confidently, yes. And the reason why is the demand. That class you're talking about is scheduled for November. I think the second or third week, the second weekend of November, I believe. And it sold out like that. I mean, we opened up more seats. We're trying to secure more room at the range so that we can get more people into the class. But that type of demand, yes, I can answer the question. We'll be back for sure. You know what, and if we're not there, and when I say we, I'm talking about the staff that works here at headquarters, and when we go out on the road and teach these classes, we have about 400 training counselors that are out there right now that teach our curriculum. So you can get online, go to USCCA.com, hit training, and hit find an instructor, and you'll find some of these classes. And this is a brand new website that we're running these classes. We're posting these classes for all the instructors that have worked with us.
And if somebody, you're talking about, so that what Nathan's question was about was for somebody who wants to become credentialed as an instructor, these are the classes for those.
Yeah, and people that just want to get trained.
That was my next question.
By our instructors, absolutely. Yep. End users, we refer to them, students, people that are looking for training to continue their evolution in their personal responsibility to be a good firearms user, a defensive firearms user. You can go online too, same website, uscca.com/training, find an instructor. You can sort the classes that you're looking for. Classes from concealed carry classes to emergency first aid fundamentals, countering the mass shooter threat, and defensive shooting fundamentals. We even have classes that are specifically designed for women that are just entering into the firearms training market. It was designed by a woman for women, so the communication is much easier for both parties to be able to understand and work with.
Yeah, and without spilling the tea here, there's a lot more coming, guys, so stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of exciting things that even I'm aware of that are in the pipeline. So stay tuned on that. Keep watching. Great question, Nathan. Let's go to another one. We've got Ron. Given the exact same circumstances, is there a difference in self-protection for a 75-year-old versus a 40-year-old? Maybe from a training side, guys, what do you think?
What do you mean? I'm not sure what that means. Is there a difference?
I'm thinking you said about disparity of force.
Disparity of
right?
force,
So somebody
right.
who's more capable of defending themselves versus somebody who's maybe in a wheelchair or has a cane or maybe is not as mobile as a 40-year-old would be.
Sure.
There's definitely
Yeah.
different circumstances there that come into play.
Yeah, but I also know some 75-year-olds that can still kick some butt.
Yeah, I mean, Steve could take me out. He's 75 and I'm 40, so.
Rick, it was nice seeing you.
I feel a cage match coming on after this.
Yeah, who wants to see that? Let our social
Leave your
care
comment
advisors
review.
understand
You're right.
that.
Yeah, next month's video.
But you know what? It comes down to training again, too. So I've always taught people that have asked a question similar to like that. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how small you are, big you are. None of that matters as long as you are educated and trained. Because the victory goes to those that are really, really going to be the quickest one to get to that act phase.
Right.
You observe something, you orient yourself, you make the decision, and you act. You follow that loop, and you're faster inside of that loop than the bad guys are, you're going to win, regardless of how old you are. But I think that what you guys are explaining to me, what you think that the gentleman was asking, the disparity of force and stuff like that, can he use a gun against, can a 75-year-old use that as a reason why they used a gun against somebody that's 35 years younger?
I think at the end of the day, it's going to depend. If you can clearly articulate beyond a reasonable doubt for what it's worth or to whatever your particular standard for what we call affirmative defenses or privileges may be in your court, wow, what a handful of words. Basically, if you're 40 and if you're 75, at some point you're going to cross a threshold, a line in the sand of you can now use deadly force. Why? Because in your particular jurisdiction, you can explain why you're in reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm. That's the standard here in Wisconsin. Check again your local listings for whatever it might be in your place. But at the end of the day, if you can meet that threshold, doesn't matter if you're 40, it doesn't matter if you're 75. Now, taking that into account, that threshold may be met earlier by somebody with some disabilities, but that's a really fact-specific. And Ron, it's a fantastic question, and it's a question that we see from time to time. It's a great question. I'm always fond of a quote that, right, God created man, Sam Colt made them all equal. Well, you know what? It's really not Sam Colt. It's also the training and the experience, right? Because if I go out and if I buy a guitar, it doesn't mean I can play it. If I go out and if I buy a firearm, doesn't mean I know the laws, how to use that firearm, how to draw it, how to carry it, and everything else. So just buying that firearm doesn't mean that you're really all that much more protected, if at all, than if you don't have the education and training. And that's why the USCCA is here. So guys, let's go to another question here. So we've got Dinah, I apologize. I am in Covington, Georgia, and try to listen for any classes in my area. I just usually hear about it after. Is there any way I can improve my chances of not missing?
Well, the only way I know of is to get in or onto that Google machine and start searching. Make that be a part of your weekly to-do list, right? I'm looking for a class. What kind of class are you looking for, Dinah? You're looking for a women's self-defense class, a women's firearms class. What is it that you're looking for? Type it in there and make sure you put your area in. And again, like I said before, you can go to uscca.com/training, find an instructor. You can also sort by classes. Right. So as that
they can even call in and talk to our member
Right.
services. I know that the people we have here help people every single day to find instructors to get into classes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So,
That's a great point. Just call in and have a chat with one of our advisors and then have them look for you.
Yeah, and guys, also, of course, if you're in the chat on YouTube, I just saw that one of the member service team just actually put up a link to look for it as well, so you can also just click there. So we've got from YouTube, how attending twice a month will affect one's, all right, we got some modifications there. So from YouTube, how attending twice a month, total 4 hours per month, will affect one's perception in a criminal trial. So unpacking that question, I'm guessing if you do have to, God forbid, use your firearm in self-defense, and you're now being charged criminally for it, if I go to a bunch of firearm classes, how is that going to be perceived in court? I think that's the gist of the question. I got a big thumbs up from Max off camera. That's always a good thing, by the way. So look, at the end of the day, my experience, again, both as a former state prosecutor as well as a criminal defense attorney, is that most state prosecutors are not sophisticated. And the state prosecutors are generally the folks who are going to be prosecuting you. They're based by county and so forth. So when I'm referring to state prosecutors, these are the people who are likely going to be the people who are both figuratively and literally pulling the criminal charge trigger on your case. They're not tremendously sophisticated most of the time when it comes to understanding a lot of things about firearms, when it comes to understanding things about training and so forth. They typically rely, and again, this is my experience across Wisconsin. There's always exceptions, and I bet you that in some states it's going to be very different. In certain locations, particularly more rural versus urban, it's also going to be very different. But they're going to be relying upon whatever their officers and whatever their witnesses, the detectives, the sergeants, the lieutenants, and so forth, are telling them about what to go off of. At the end of the day, though, if I have a prosecutor who wants to try to use the USCCA's curriculum against my client to show that there's some sort of gun nut or something like that, I would frankly look at that as an advantage, because you know what? You just opened up the door, buddy, for me to get in all of the facts and training and evidence that my client has voluntarily gone through for months, maybe even years in advance of having to use, being forced to use a firearm to stop the threat, about de-escalation, about walking away, about evading, about the fact that at the end of the day, a firearm's a tool and it's your last tool in the box. It's not the first tool, and you're only using it to stop the threat. You're not using it for anything else. So in court, we have something called rules of evidence, which means that it's very difficult sometimes to get lots of facts and information. The jury, if you think about it like a play almost, the jury is just seeing what's out on stage. There's always a lot more things that are happening behind stage and pre-production and all this other kind of stuff. Something that's always shocking to my clients, and I'm at the largest criminal defense firm in the state of Wisconsin, so we have an awful lot of clients. Something that we always see is the fact that clients always assume, well, that's a bad guy. He's known as a bad guy. He's attacked all these other guys in the past, so we can get in all these other acts evidence of prior bad acts and so forth. Yeah, not so easy. We've got to file pretrial motions. I assure you the prosecutor's almost certainly going to disagree. They're going to try to get in sometime that you did something back in 5th grade or something like that, or at least I've seen stuff not too far off from that. So you got to be careful about assuming what's going to be coming to trial, what's not going to be coming to trial. Case in point, to bring it back to the fantastic question, they might be opening up the door to bring in all of the stuff about that training information, whereas previously we may have had to try to pry that door open to get it in. The prosecutor may have just walked into it for us. So keeping those training logs and keeping all those things can actually be fantastic, assuming, of course, you followed the training. Because if you did all the wrong things, that training is not going to be a tremendous help to you as it could have otherwise. So.
Well, the training could be very aggressive in nature. So there are some really, really great experienced instructors that are out there, but they're teaching a class that might be better for a SWAT team member and or a private security firm, those types of training. Those exist. If that's your 4 hours every month, and that's what you're doing all the time.
That's a little different though, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
and you make a mistake as a citizen in a self-defense situation, now that training might be used against you. You have to be aware of how people on the outside are going to look at where you've been and what you did when you were there. So
right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic point. All right. Any tips on shooting accurately while moving? Guys, Brick?
practice.
Practice?
I mean, really, that's what it comes
Perfect
down
practice.
to.
Right.
I mean, just practice in general. I mean, shooting on its own can be difficult. And then once you add in that moving, I mean, it makes it so much more difficult. So, I mean, practice. You really have to practice.
Yeah, and you know what? You need to learn how to do it as well, though, too. We hosted John Lovell here a couple weeks ago, and he ran his Pistol 1 and Pistol 2 courses, and in his Pistol 2 course, the students were moving and shooting. And I watched, I wasn't participating in that training, I was an observer, and I watched how John was working with the students that we had that day, and it was magical. I mean, I'm going to give him some great kudos to the way that he taught that class and the way that those students received it because of the way he taught that class. But Mike is exactly right. You're not going to be able to shoot on the move with any accuracy at all unless somebody has taught you how to do that, and then you find a place and a time where you can do that. And if you're new to that training, I would never do it on your own. I would constantly look for opportunities, and we talked about that 2 to 4 hours worth of training every month. If you find somebody like John Lovell that's teaching a class like that, stay plugged into it and do those shooting on the move drills on a regular basis, but under the watchful guide of a guy like John.
And keep in mind, of course, that your range may not allow you to be shooting and moving. In fact, it probably doesn't if it's like most ranges. So always things to be aware of as well. You always got to follow the range rules. We've got a question from Rick. In a market as flush with attorneys as Chicago, what criteria should I use to choose one to work with as my counsel? Rick, the answer is move to Wisconsin and just avoid the question altogether.
Next.
Next question. No, seriously though. So, and you know, it's a question I get pretty frequently. We get called at our office with folks who want to know how to choose an attorney, and they're in a totally different state, and a state that I may not know just anyone in. And there's a handful of different ways that you can try to evaluate it. There's no one way that always works, of course. One big way to do it is to learn about their practice. So what kind of areas of law do you do? Because I'll tell you that most commonly, probably 97, 98% of our competition is in criminal law. They're general practitioners, whereas our attorneys our criminal defense attorneys are exclusively criminal defense attorneys, which means that basically all of their clients are criminal defense clients. That means basically that there's such a demand for their services, their talents, their knowledge, their expertise, they must be pretty decent. Now, you got to be careful because sometimes firms are maybe just good at marketing and they run a good marketing game at the end of the day. But that's certainly, again, one big way to distinguish, boy, yeah, my attorney, oh, good news, they'll also do grandpa's will. They'll also bring in, you know, my cousin's Ukrainian bride. They'll also do, you know, these 10 other different things, you know, landlord-tenant law, they'll do employment law, they'll do contract law, they'll do the divorce, they'll do all these different things, right? And that's not to disparage Ukrainian brides, by the way. A good friend of mine's married to someone from Ukraine. So true story, that's 100% true. So at any rate though, but you get my point, is looking for that focus, that specialization in a certain area is probably the biggest distinguishing way to try to figure out what I'm dealing with. And of course, asking them questions. And if you get that gut check moment of, boy, they seem to be deferring, they seem to be beating around the bush, they can't give me straight answers or look at me right in my eyes, you got to rely on that instinct. Don't be impressed by trophies. Don't be impressed by, oh, that one trial I had, you know, 20 years ago or whatever. Don't be impressed by all that. Focus on the mileage, not the years. Don't look at the awards. Most awards are worth junk. Unless you're an attorney, unless you're in the industry, you don't know which ones are meaningful, which ones are meaningless. Although, hint, most of them are meaningless. So practice, what are they doing? Can they answer your questions? Rely on your gut and instinct. I will also add that, of course, USCCA has a critical response team and, of course, an over 1,000 attorney network in every single state throughout the United States. So that's also a fantastic place to start to figure out who might be some great people around me.
And they're not just let in, they're vetted. So our critical response team does a really good job of making sure that, well, guess who kind of advised them on how to be able to select those attorneys too. So we've done our due diligence, and like Tom said, it's a great resource. So use it. That's another great reason to be a USCCA member.
But it's got to, you know, it's like choosing clothing or something like that. You know, a great attorney, it might be a great suit, but it might be a great suit on Steve, not on me, or on Brick, not on Steve, or whatever it might be, right? So you got to find somebody you can communicate with, because if you can't communicate with this person, you are harming your outcome in the process, and you've created a lot more friction for yourself. So you got to find the right person that fits you as well.
Yep.
So, all right, we have a question from Cherie. Any tips on right hand, left eye dominant training?
Sure. All kinds of tips. Practice makes perfect. You know, there's a lot of people that are coming out now saying, I say trainers, not people, but there's a lot of trainers coming out right now that say that doesn't matter. You know, what matters is your defensive accuracy, because that's what we should be training for, right? All of these, 90% of defensive firearm situations occur inside of 14 feet. I think 9 to 14 feet. That's 2 eyes open, you know? So are
You don't
we
even see
finding
your sights.
Are we finding the sights at that point in time? We're finding the target that we're aiming at, but we're really not too concerned about the sights. But now there is call for being able to shoot precisely too. So not saying that we don't need to be able to have one eye closed and line those the front sight up through the rear sight. You know, there are instances for that. But again, the recent training that we just had, the instructor was telling us, don't do that cross-eyed dominant thing. He was saying, even if your dominant eye is your left eye and you shoot right-handed, use your right eye. You know, he was telling people to follow that, and it was working towards the end of the day when he helped people understand that they didn't need to worry about it so much. But everybody's eyesights are different too.
Can
know?
you pick out it and point?
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
Yeah.
All right, so finding the system that works for you consistently and then training to that.
That's what I was saying. Yes.
Wait, an attorney just summed it up in fewer words
Yeah, I
and
mean,
clarified. Wow.
I was the succinct one, like August 22nd, 2019. Max, we got that on the calendar?
First time ever.
First time ever. You heard it right here, folks, live. All right, next question is from Dennis. I am looking for a concealed carry backpack. Do you have any recommendations?
Wow, there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of different options out there, really. And you know me, I love gear. I have so many backpacks at home, it's ridiculous. But
Yeah.
it's really about functionality, getting your hands on a bag. I know everyone loves to do shopping online. I have had more problems buying bags online than anything else.
Really?
Yeah, actually getting your hands on it, being able to like look at it, open it up, see the functionality, see where the pockets are, see if it's got, you know, Velcro where you can clip in a holster, or if you want to put armor, if it's got, you know, a little pocket in the back or whatever.
What problems?
We do gear reviews though too. So I mean, you can go into our archives. If you're a USCCA member, that's another great benefit where you can go and search out, you know, backpacks and see which one that we reviewed and which ones that we recommend. That's one way to go about it. I've never went and shopped for or even looked into it because I personally don't have a use for it, and I haven't had the question coming to me from our instructors or the students of our instructors. So, but now that it's coming up, because we've got a few of those questions here, I'm sure that I'll ask Mike to do more research on it.
And you know, Mike, you said, Mike, no, you got, all right. So you said that you've had some issues trying to find or buy backpacks online. Mm-hmm. You mean you run into quality issues or?
Quality issues, or so I try to set my bag up in a certain way so it's going to be more functional for me, right? So buying something online and just looking at pictures don't always line up with the actual product. I've had bags that have just fallen apart once you've gotten them. So really for me, I have to get my hands on something like that and kind of like play it out in my head. I don't actually take my gun and my magazines to the store, but you know, kind of plan it out. This is where I'm going to put these different items in my bag. Okay, this looks like a pretty good bag. I've had the same bag probably for the last 4 years now that I carry every single day. Yeah.
And could you say what brand that is? Or?
It's a 511.
So it's a 511?
Yep.
Okay, so you spend money and you get a good product, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little over $100 maybe, but I mean, I've carried that bag every single day since then, and I carry probably 30 plus pounds of weight in it every single day.
Gotcha.
So looking at the straps and how it comes across your neck and how the weight is distributed when you're carrying it is very important if you're going to be carrying, you know, guns or ammo or books or whatever.
Right.
All those things are really important.
And guys, for anybody who may have tuned in, you know, since we've kicked this off, we've had a great about 20, 25 minutes or so rolling here. My name is Tom Grieve. I'm a former state prosecutor, criminal defense attorney. We've got Steve and Brick, two top trainers here at the USCCA. And the topic we're talking about is one that's tough, to say the least, to get your arms around for lots of different reasons. We're talking about back to school and the conversations to have with children, and what can we do as parents, as grandparents, as aunts, as uncles, as friends, cousins, you name it, to try to extend that protector mindset and that awareness to keep people safe.
Yeah, we want to make sure when we drop our kids off at school or we see them off on the bus, we want to make sure that they come home that night, the same way that they left.
The conversation needs to be had, but the conversation needs to be catered to the child and the age of the child. Just telling you from my own personal experience, the conversation that I have with my 14-year-old is not the exact same conversation I'm going to have with my 6-year-old.
Sure.
Because the last thing I want to do is just like scare the crap out of a 6-year-old talking about this really real stuff that's potentially going to go down.
Or even from one 14-year-old to the next 14-year-old, just depending upon their temperament and so
Yep.
forth. And Steve, you had some great points if you just want to kind of hit those for people who've tuned in and just recently, talking about just the sound of gunfire and taking action and so forth.
Yeah, if you watch any of the security cam or the body cam footage of some of these events that are occurring in today's world, when the gun starts to go off, we're seeing over and over and over people stopping in their tracks and looking towards where they saw that sound or heard that sound come
The
from.
meerkat effect.
Yep, and then they turn around and orient towards the sound, and they even will take steps towards it. And it's because they think that they know what it was, but they weren't sure. So I think one way that we can help our kids is to let them experience what it sounds like in a safe way.
Right.
Okay, so we don't want to damage their ears, but we do want them to know what gunfire sounds like. And then when they know that, we can explain to them what they should do if they were at school or in any public venue where they hear that noise. They don't want to stop and turn around. We were talking earlier that if it's a third grade, an elementary aged child, and maybe the school they share with middle schools, they know they do that around here, and something happens in another room that causes that stampede. Now you got 38th graders going full speed down the hallway,
Right.
and that poor little third grader that turned around to see what all the noise was about just gets trampled.
Right.
And we want them to understand how important it is. I hear that sound, that means get out of here. That means go away from that sound as quickly as you possibly can. So take them to an outdoor range and put some distance between you and those that are shooting, but let them hear what that sound sounds like. Take them to an indoor range, but not into the firing range without ear pro, but outside in a retail area. Let them hear what that popping noise sounds like when people are pressing a trigger. So and then talk to them about, I hear it, I know it's back there, so that means I got to go that way.
Right.
Not later, right now. I
Right.
gotta
Take that
go.
decisive action.
Yep.
Right. And it was Colin Powell who said that, a great plan poorly executed is far worse than an okay plan decisively executed or rapidly executed, something like that. But I mean, it's kind of what I'm hearing echo from what you're saying is, some action, even as maybe not the best course of action, but some action right away can be a lot better than the wrong action downstream.
Yeah, you need to get away from it. Keep it as simple as you can. Like Mike said before, when you're dealing with children, whether they're 5, 6 years old or 14 years old, depending upon how they've been raised up until that point in time, they could be quite sensitive to this discussion. So if you keep it as simple as possible and just help them understand, if you hear this noise, that's something bad happening, move away from bad as quickly as possible. If you keep it that simple, and then tell them obviously once they've gotten far enough away and look for an adult will help you, to do what's the next thing you need to do.
And Kevin here has asked a great clarification question, or maybe kind of a follow-up point, is would it not be helpful to know the potential direction from which the gunfire is coming? A quick look back may be justified, but I think a quick look back to see what's going on is very different than somebody turning around, kind of shuffling over and trying to figure out what's going on, which is kind of more what I'm hearing from your end, right?
Well, if I hear the shots fired, right?
Right.
And I'm heading this way, I can already see that there's nobody there, so I'm going.
Right.
I'm getting away from what I don't know right now, and then when I get away from it, I'll turn back around and I'll look.
Gotcha.
But I'm not going to stop and look right now. Now, that's the natural thing to do, is to turn around and stop and look, so that's where the training comes in again. So if we go to the range, have them watch somebody shooting, and then have them turn around, have them go all 360 and hear those shots fired, so that they can start to train themselves to, this is what it sounds like when it comes from my right. This is what it sounds like when it comes from behind me. This is what it sounds like when it comes from my left. And again, nature may make us look. We train the startle reaction too, where something happens and people raise their head, they duck, they get into that position. We also want them to be able to move and act on that right off the bat, whether it's a bad person that's trying to harm you, and we are armed and ready to be able to defend ourselves. We teach how to go to the get the firearm ready to be able to defend ourselves. But for children, that's not an option. We
Right.
tell them to go. You know, you don't see anything there, and you hear it back in this area, go, get out of there.
Right, but even having those conversations so that, you know, if we have unexplored territory, so to speak, in our mind, and I'm going to rephrase, maybe repackage it compared to how we've talked about it in the past of, you know, the saying goes that the body cannot go where the mind has not already been. And fundamentally, I think it has to do with the fact of whether or not we've got explored versus unexplored territory, and we can only act decisively in explored territory. So having these conversations can be so vital and so important, not just with kids, but with friends, with loved ones, with anybody that you're trying to protect and get them on the wagon here, so to speak, as far as being able to take that action and exploring that territory just by having a conversation periodically about, well, what would you do if, what would happen next, and so forth, and getting their mind to explore that territory so that if, God forbid, something does happen, you can immediately start acting. It's somewhat, at least, explored territory. Granted, everything will be different, but we've already done a lot to unpackage that and to take that bundle apart to hopefully facilitate more rapid reaction. So, next question. What do I need to know about concealed carry reciprocity, and where can I learn more? Brick, do you want to take this one away?
Seems to be a recurring theme. I think we have something about this.
We got
I mean, there's
like
this
a brochure.
organization, it starts with a U and ends
Yeah.
with an A.
USCA.
USCCA.com /
Reciprocity map, yep.
Yeah.
Gives you all the information you need to know.
Yeah, and USCCA.com/laws as well. Fantastic resource. Laws with an S at the end. So next up, question from our monthly Ask an Attorney for Platinum and Elite members that we have gotten quite often. If I wanted to avoid using my firearm in self-defense, would a good idea be to carry a set of handcuffs to apprehend a criminal who may be trying to attack you? Handcuffs, anyone?
Not for a criminal.
Not for a criminal?
No.
I'm not going to touch that.
Good.
But for a criminal, I guess.
I
So
would
no.
say personally that would not be an option for me. No.
Okay, so you're anti-zip tie, handcuffs, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, let me step back. I do carry zip ties, but that would be more in a situation where somebody has already been stopped, but they're still alive. That's somebody I don't want to be able to do any further action. Their weapon's been taken away. They can't really cause any more harm. But I'm not going to carry handcuffs in place of a firearm and be apprehending bad guys. I do not have a badge.
Well, the question talked about if somebody's trying to attack you. So that means that you have to defend, and that part of the defense is going to be the fight, right? The fight to defend. I mean, using the handcuffs would only be possible then if you were to draw your firearm and point it at them and then order them to the ground, and hopefully they'll listen to what you're saying. You know, so again, more than likely that's not going to occur. More than likely they're either going to run away or they're going to engage you. So the use of the handcuffs really probably isn't going to be an option. You know,
Right.
you're going to fight or you're going to watch somebody run. It's
Right.
one of those two things. Handcuffs are for police.
Right.
That's their job. Our job is to get away from the bad stuff. Our first option is not to engage. Our first option is to get away as quickly as possible. Let the police do their job. But if you're not given an option, and you have to fight to defend, I don't know that I'll be looking for handcuffs.
Yeah, and to my way of thinking, if we're in a truly emergency situation, and I'm thinking I'm stranded on a desert island sort of emergency situation, I guess the last thing I'm thinking about when I'm building my shelter is which way the window is going to be facing, and am I going to have a place to, have a coat, whatever, right? You get the point. If we're in an emergency situation, I'm not worried about those details, and putting handcuffs on somebody seems like first off, very dangerous thing. If you talk to any law enforcement officer, when you have to approach a potentially very dangerous suspect or someone like that, trying to handcuff them and taking them into custody is one of the most dangerous things that a law enforcement officer can possibly be doing. And they've got a lot of training, a lot of backup and radios, and you name it. They've got all the gears and equipment on them. And now, if you want to be doing that, not something I'm going to wholeheartedly endorse or even partially endorse.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So if Mike is trying to harm me and I take him down and I handcuff him, could I potentially be charged with a crime?
So that's basically what came up in the Ask the Attorney webinar this morning.
I remember.
Yeah. So here's a couple things to kind of take apart on that. Number one, are you going to be charged with the crime? So Brick attacks Steve, Steve takes him down and handcuffs him. Okay, great. Please show up. Let's play this out. Is Steve getting arrested for false imprisonment, which, by the way, is a felony? Hopefully not, but maybe. So you've definitely put yourself in the legal X at a minimum, and maybe you've made yourself a little bit safer. Maybe it was entirely justified. Maybe it was your only action that you could take. I don't know. But just be aware of the fact that every action has some sort of reaction, and the reaction from law enforcement, and guys, I'm not endorsing this. Let me be clear. I'm just saying I'm the messenger. Here's what it is. I have seen good guys. I had a particular case where somebody duct taped somebody's hands behind their back after there was an incident. And my guy, the guy who did the duct taping after subduing the bad guy, he got charged with a crime for it. He got charged with a felony for it. So you just got to keep those sorts of things in mind. The second thing, though, is we get into sort of like citizen arrest situations and things like that, which would basically be the legal justification to do something like this, if not necessity or self-defense, or maybe all of the above or some amalgamation of the above. But again, that means you've already been charged. That's a rough scenario. It's a rough road to go down. And yes, many states do have citizen arrest procedures and laws on the books. I can tell you, out of I don't know how many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of cases, myself, my firm, I've been in court, I've seen you name it, I've never seen once somebody argue citizen arrest. Your attorney's going to be dusting off some statutes and some case law to get that out there. And if you are that zebra, right? You've ever heard the expression, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras, because it's probably going to be a horse, not a zebra. If you are that zebra, that's weird guinea pig territory to be in. And having defended some clients who have been arguably used as legal guinea pigs before, it's not a fun place to be. Because as an attorney, I can't really tell them, here's what will happen, because everything's going to be uncharted, unexplored territory again. So I'm not saying if this is the only thing you can do and you're locked into the room with this guy, and you know what, maybe it makes sense under your circumstances, I don't know. But keep in mind, you may get some legal pushback after the fact. Next question is from Adam. What advice do you have for an over-the-road truck driver who carries? Anyone want to jump in?
We've talked repeatedly today about knowing the laws, right?
Yep.
So when you're over the road, are you changing jurisdictions? And if you're
State to state.
If you're going over into another state, you need to know what those laws are, and you need to obey them as if you lived there. So first part is knowledge, right? Know exactly where you're going and what those laws are when you go there, right? The second part of it is stay away from bad places.
Right.
So now you know the law. Well, when you get there, if you're planning on stopping and sleeping or resting someplace, choose someplace that's lighted and guarded, patrolled by police officers, and bad guys stay away. So that just becomes part of your situational awareness routine. Stay away from the places where you could find yourself in trouble.
Right. Right, yeah, and to that point, the surest way to make yourself a client of a criminal defense attorney is, even though you're a good person, is you're going to places where maybe things happen, right? And I'm not saying that that's fair to you necessarily, but, as the expression in my household is, nothing good happens after 10 o'clock at night, or at least midnight, right? And we joke about that, but we also all intuitively know there's a little kernel of truth to that as well. So that kernel of truth is what you need to tease apart and be thinking about whenever it is you make decisions about who I'm going to associate, where am I going to be going, and what are we going to be doing there. Because typically when I talk to clients, there's usually a point in their night that they can rewind back to, and they said, yeah, I want that one back. Even if they did nothing wrong in the incident itself, there was often, not always, there are truly blameless people out there. I'm not saying that everybody brings it on themselves, but oftentimes we can go back and retrace someone's night to figure out, maybe not the best decision that happened at 10:30, huh? Yeah, maybe not. So just keep that in mind. We've got a message or a question from Commando602. I'm going to guess not real name. What can I do to protect my grandkids on school property when they don't allow firearms on school property?
I would say educate the school. See what kind of plan that the kids' school actually has in place for security. Do they lock all the doors? Do they have to, do people check in when you come in and out of the school? I mean, obviously, you can't carry a gun. It's just not an option.
Yeah, you start at the school itself. You know, involve yourself. You said grandkids, so I'm guessing that grandparents can go to the parent-teacher, the PTOs, you know, the associations, organizations that meet after school and discuss how they can improve the school and go up a level from there. Go to the school board, go to the meetings and have discussions with those that are in charge of your children's and grandchildren's safety at those schools. That's the perfect advice, Mike, as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to guess that Tom's going to agree too.
Run for school board, you know, become one of the decision makers. All too often, you know, folks in politics get really focused on who's the president, who is, you know, in Congress, who's my senator, and so forth. And what you miss, and speaking as criminal defense attorney, and in essence, in very many ways, a constitutional law attorney, what you guys miss is that most of your rights, many of your rights, they're not being taken away, they're not being attacked, they're not being infringed upon at the federal level. Not even necessarily at the state level. It's often happening at your municipal level in these little elections. This is where you down the lens can win the day by going out, knocking on doors, talking to people, talking to friends, talking to neighbors. It's a ground level opportunity to actually do something because, yeah, you're right, Commando 602. You know, there's a lot of laws that sometimes box us into a corner. And we can either get serious about having conversations to start expanding that box and hopefully ultimately taking that box away, or we can kind of, you know, kick the ground and say, oh shucks. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing here, but local municipal elections, who's judged, your state assemblies, your state reps, state senators, all these little things on the ground. This is where so many of your rights take place and can be lost. It's scary. So getting involved, echoing what both these guys said, is certainly a big way.
Another way to get involved too is volunteer.
Yep.
Volunteer to be a hall monitor or that first line of defense. When people are coming into the school, maybe you can be there and you can sign them in and vet them out and take a look at people. I mean, there's signs that we can look for that would tell us whether or not this is somebody that we should maybe not let into the school. You know, be a volunteer that way. What you can't do is break the law and take your firearm into the school.
Right.
You know, but what you can do is get in the way.
Right.
You know, if there's a pageant or something like that, a talent show that's in the auditorium or the gymnasium, you know, get a couple of your friends to stand in the doorways, volunteer again, and keep your eyes and your ears open and look for those things that could become a problem. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and you know, and knowing how to, as silly as it sounds, knowing how to stop a door, and getting involved. You know, legislatively, we're talking about maybe you can't bring a firearm onto any school grounds. Maybe it can't be a public school grounds, but you know, maybe it's up for grabs someday about can we move the lines so that certain teachers can carry in, maybe other certain qualified people, like maybe off-duty police officers. By qualified people, I am not saying that you down the lens who isn't an off-duty police officer is not qualified, right? That's ultimately where hopefully this thing can go. But sometimes you gotta just bite off the apple one bit at a time on this. So guys, it's been great. We've all really loved having you here. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to keep this going, hope to keep the discussion going. Remember, the discussion doesn't end here. It ends at your dinner tables tonight and ends with your conversations with your neighbors, just like what we talked about. Fantastic question to segue from. Steve, Brick, thanks guys. I'm Tom Grieve. We'll be seeing you later.